One way to stay young and to hold back the aging process is to avoid excessive exposure to stress. Now, stress is part of everyday life, and some stress is actually good for you. Let's face it, life would be pretty bland without some stress to add a bit of spice. But when things get out of hand, excessive stress can have profound effects on both your physical and psychological well-being. If all isn't right on the inside, that's often reflected on the outside. And in many cases, that causes you to look older than you really are. And there are two ways of coping with excessive stress. First of all, you can deal with the stress and find ways of overcoming it, or better still, avoid it altogether. Now let's look at how you can deal with the stress. And the best way to deal with stress is just to relax. Now, relaxation is different for different people. For some people, it might mean following a hobby, or it might mean playing sport or watching their favorite team. It might mean taking a vacation or a short break, or it might mean just putting some distance between you and the stressful situation. Another way of dealing with stress is through hypnosis. Now, I can personally attest to the fact that this does work. Some years ago, I was under a lot of stress. I had a job that I hated, working for someone who absolutely detested me and was desperately trying to get me fired at every opportunity. I split up with my girlfriend. We've been going out for a couple of years, but it was quite obvious that our relationship had pretty much run its course. And although I suppose it was amicable as breakups go, it was still very unpleasant and very stressful. And then on top of all that, I was involved in a car crash. A guy ran a red light and crashed into the side of my car and damaged it, not enough to make it a total write-off, but enough to make it undrivable. And it turned out that he had no insurance. He wasn't in the country legally. The address he gave me was one that he'd moved away from a couple of years ago. And the paint and body shop that I took the car to was trying to rip me off. And it was all very, very stressful. And I started to get panic attacks. I was not sleeping very well. And some guy came to my work and didn't know my name and was asking for me and said he was a tall guy, 30 something. And I was 22 at the time, so that didn't go down too well either. So I decided to undergo some hypnotherapy because I'd read about it in a magazine. And I found a hypnotherapist. Actually, I found her out of the Yellow Pages, and her office was about a 5-minute walk from where I worked. And I had a couple of sessions with this hypnotherapist. And she put me into a deep, relaxing, hypnotic trance. It was the most deep, relaxing feeling I've ever felt. And she gave a couple of post-hypnotic suggestions, one of which was a trigger word. And she said, every time you say this word to yourself, you'll feel as relaxed as you are now. And it worked. And she recorded the sessions so I could play them back every day to reinforce the post-hypnotic suggestions. I used to listen to them last thing at night before I went to bed so that I would be nice and relaxed so I could get a decent night's sleep, and so on. And it really, really helped. And I highly recommend it. Now, of course, the best way to avoid stress is just to avoid stressful situations in the first place. And this isn't always possible, but there are some things that you can do to minimize the situations that cause you the stress. So think about what is causing you to be stressed and then devise ways of dealing with them. Now, let's take workplace stress, for example. Lots of people feel very stressed at work. And in my own case, from when I was going through a very stressful time, I found that the only way to actually deal with this stress was to basically find another job, because it was quite clear that my boss hated my guts and he was going to get me fired sooner or later. So I might as well leave and find another job, which I did. And my stress levels went down quite considerably. And if you have a job, then again, discussing the situation with your superiors is probably the best thing to do. In my case, it wouldn't have made any difference, but in other cases, it can help. Something else you can do is to turn off your work cell phone out of hours so you're not getting work calls when you're on your own time. And likewise, not checking work emails when you're at home. And also, socializing with people from outside your work can be helpful because when you socialize with people from your work, what do you talk about? Work. So when you socialize with people from outside of your work, then you're going to talk about something different and it's going to take your mind off work and it's not going to be quite so stressful. Also, if you find getting to and from your workplace is very stressful, then you might want to change your route. You might want to drive a different route. You might want to take public transport instead of driving or vice versa, because sometimes actually just getting to your work can be very stressful. And finally, if nothing else is going to work, then you have to do what I did, which is to change jobs or change careers if necessary to find something that is actually much less stressful. Now, of course, if you're an entrepreneur, then your stress levels can be almost off the scale compared to people who have a job. So what you need to do to try and keep the stress levels down is, first of all, to keep regular hours. Now, I know when you're an entrepreneur, you can keep thinking about your business all the time, but you want to make sure that you keep regular hours, that you're only available to clients during regular office hours, and that you only work during office hours, and that you actually do take some time off. You want to have a dedicated place to work from. Now, this could be a room in your home if you have a home office. If you have not a lot of space at home, then just have somewhere that's a dedicated place in your living room to work from. Get an old-fashioned roll-top desk that you can shut and basically separate you from your work physically from time to time. You should obviously take regular breaks. You should take regular vacations. You should take time off. And when you're not involved in running your business, you should make sure, like when you have a job, that your cell phone is turned off, that you're not checking your emails and so on, so that you do actually get some time away from your work. And you should outsource tasks that you find stressful. I know a lot of people find doing the books to be very stressful. So hire a bookkeeper or an accountant to do that for you. And of course, that frees up more time anyway for you to do things that you enjoy and for you to actually work on your business. And also, you want to network with other people in your industry. And this is very important because any problems that you're facing that are making you stressed are also going to be problems that other people in your industry are facing. So when you talk to people in your industry and you share your problems, then there's a good chance that someone is going to say, oh, well, that happened to me and I did such and such. And that's going to solve the problem and you're not going to be stressed about it. And there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can do this in person, or you can do it via a discussion forum. And there are lots and lots of them on the internet. If you just do a search for your industry followed by forum, you're bound to find quite a few. And once you've spent some time on there and you've got to know the other people on the forum, it can be very useful and very, very helpful. And of course, it can help you to avoid a lot of the stress in your life. One way to stay young is from the inside out, because what goes on the inside is often reflected on the outside. And I'm going to talk about that in this video. And a balanced diet can help you to defy the signs of aging. Because if your body doesn't get the vitamins and minerals that it needs, not only is it not going to be able to provide the fuel to live your daily life to its full potential, but your cells are not going to renew properly, making you look old. So if you eat a lot of junk food, stuff that's high in saturated fats, in sugar and simple carbs, then not only will you be obese, but your heart is going to have to work harder and your arteries are going to clog up with cholesterol, making it harder for nutrients to circulate. And when this happens, your body concentrates all of its efforts into keeping you alive. After all, that's its most important function. And maintenance gets pushed into second place. And your health deteriorates as a result, making you look older than you really are. And the converse is also true. If you're getting the right amount of nutrition, then you'll have a healthy glow, making you look younger. And you'll also have more energy than your peers, again, making you look younger. So, you're going to actually act younger because you're going to have more energy than other people who are your age. Now, one thing that you should do to ensure that this happens is to always eat breakfast. That's actually very important. In fact, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But for so many people, this consists of either a cup of coffee on the go or a so-called breakfast bar that's laden with unhealthy fats and sugars. And so you're getting all the wrong sort of nutrition at the time when you really need the right nutrition the most. So a breakfast consisting of foods that are high in vitamins, proteins, and slow-release carbohydrates can keep your energy levels up till lunchtime. And you should sit down to eat it as well. Treat it like a proper meal. Don't eat it on the go. Don't eat it on your commute. Sit down, have a proper meal. You don't actually have to sit down at the table to eat it. You can eat it off your lap on the sofa watching breakfast TV if you want, if that's, what makes it easier for you. But you should treat it like a proper meal and set aside a proper amount of time to eat it and digest it. And if necessary, get up earlier so that you have time to do this. It's very important. And you should also snack healthily. There's nothing wrong with snacking, but you should choose something that's healthy. So, for example, choose fruit instead of candy or chips. Now, fruit has got plenty of vitamins, and it's got nothing artificial, especially if you buy fresh fruit, from your local greengrocer or from your supermarket and so on. And fruit that's in season is going to have all the nutrients that your body needs for the particular time of year. So you're going to have slow release sugars during the winter time. You're going to have fast release sugars during the spring and summer. And if you can get something that's organically grown, then that's even better because you're not going to be taking in things like pesticides and artificial fertilizer residue and that sort of thing. So again, it's healthier and it's going to be better for you, and that's going to reflect in your appearance. Something else that you should do is to drink water instead of soft drinks. Now, soft drinks are full of corn syrup, they're full of processed sugars, and they've got lots of artificial colorings and flavorings, none of which do you any good. And carbonated spring water with a slice of lemon or a splash of fruit juice can be just as refreshing as a soft drink. And of course, spring water or bottled water is better for you than tap water, because it's less likely to contain things like fluoride or chlorine and other additives. And of course, tea and coffee are fine too, and they contain things like antioxidants that can be beneficial, especially tea. But of course, some people need the extra jolt of caffeine that you get from a nice cup of coffee. If you do that, then try, if possible, to get real coffee, that's freshly ground and percolated or filter made, rather than using instant coffee, which can often have lots of artificial stuff in it. And it's best to get your vitamins and minerals from food, and eating as healthily as possible is always the best policy. Get fresh food, get it organically grown if possible, eat what's in season because that's what your body needs. And as I was saying, what goes on the inside is reflected on the outside. But that said, the way your body absorbs vitamins and minerals changes as you get older. And in some cases, your body doesn't absorb all the nutrients from your food in the time that it takes it to get through your digestive tract. So you're not actually getting as many minerals and vitamins into your body, into your bloodstream, as you would do when you were younger, even though you're eating a highly nutritious diet. So in that case, it's perfectly okay to top up your intake of nutrients with supplements. Now, of course, you should always check with your doctor or other health advisor first, just to make sure that you're not suffering from any intolerances, and that's very important. And a good multivitamin and multimineral tablet taken once a day is enough for most people, and they are quite reasonably priced. But you might need to top this up with additional supplements if necessary, if you find that you are suffering from some sort of a deficiency. Now, good ones to consider are vitamin C for keeping viruses at bay. In fact, I read an article once that said that no virus known to man is able to survive large amounts of vitamin C under laboratory conditions, although there is, of course, a limit to the amount of vitamin C that your body can absorb. But vitamin C is very good for keeping viruses at bay, keeping coughs and colds at bay, etc. Vitamin D for your bones. It's just as good for you in adulthood as it is when you're a growing child. Potassium for blood pressure. Citicoline for memory, zinc for appetite, and we could also add vitamin E for your eyesight, and there are a whole lot of others too. And if you do find that you're suffering from some sort of a deficiency, then of course talking to your doctor should be the first port of call. But also you can look things up on the internet to give you some idea as to the sort of thing that you might need. Now, when you do decide to go for supplements, it's best to buy them from a specialist retailer instead of from a drugstore or a supermarket. And that's because the sort of things that you buy from the supermarket or from the drugstore tend to be much lower dosage than the ones that you can buy from a specialist retailer or a health food store or that sort of thing. So you can make sure that you're getting the maximum amount of vitamins or minerals by talking to a specialist retailer. And a specialist retailer will have people on hand who understand how all these things work and can give you some good advice. So there you go. Looking good on the inside is reflected when you look good on the outside. Want to stay young? Then don't retire. Now, I know that's rather an odd thing to say, but please bear with me. I'll explain why in this video. You see, keeping your brain active is crucial to appearing younger and living longer. Now, think of your brain like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, eventually it's going to wither and die. Like the saying goes, use it or lose it. And so many people spend their whole lives at work. And they do work that they find engaging, and they do work that they find stimulating, and then they retire and do nothing. They spend all day just simply staring out into space like this guy here. And they become bored, they become isolated, and they feel like their lives have absolutely no purpose. So don't become one of them. And the thing is, you don't have to keep working full time. Getting a part-time job that isn't too strenuous can get you out of the house, it can keep your brain active, and it can enable you to meet new people, all of which is very important. And for example, in the UK, the B&Q chain of home improvement stores made it their policy to hire older workers. And I think the oldest guy who works for them is in his 90s. But the management found that the older people who went to work for them, and they mostly work part-time, were more considerate and more conscientious than the younger people who worked there. And they also appreciated the fact that they could meet other people and that they could actually do something that was fulfilling and helpful. And so it was a win-win situation all round. Now, something else that you can do when you retire from your main occupation is to start your own business. If you had a professional career, then you can become a consultant. And that's great because then you're passing your knowledge, the knowledge that you've acquired over a lifetime of working, on to the next generation, and you're helping to advise people who are perhaps just coming into the industry that you're leaving, ways that they can become even more successful. So becoming a consultant is a great thing to do when you retire from your main business. Or you can start your own online business, and this is great. You can do something like affiliate marketing, or you can sell on eBay. And of course, you can base your hours that you work around other activities in your life, because lots of people, of course, concentrate on hobbies and things like that when they've retired. Now, of course, some pension schemes, however, prohibit their pensioners from taking any paid employment. And this is particularly true of a lot of company pension schemes. They say that once you're retired, you can't take on any other paid employment. But all is not lost, though. What you can do is volunteer work. And helping out in a charity shop, in a school, or in a hospital can have all the benefits of working, except the paycheck, of course. But you're still going to be active, you're still going to be meeting new people, you're still going to have some sort of purpose to your life, which can be very fulfilling and very rewarding. And of course, there are lots of people who keep working right on into their very old age. So let's take a look at some famous oldies who've kept working. And the first one is Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom and her husband, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Now, at the time that I'm making this video, they are aged 90 and 95 respectively, which is pretty old to keep working. But the Queen has carried out 340 official engagements during 2015. That's the last year that the figures are available for. And that covers everything from meeting government ministers, being head of the Commonwealth, meeting the UK Prime Minister, the Commonwealth Prime Ministers, giving royal assent to legislation from the UK and from other Commonwealth countries. It also means going out and doing things in the community, meeting people, etc. And even if those 340 official engagements were just cutting a ribbon or unveiling a foundation stone and making a short speech and shaking hands with people, at the age of 90, that's quite a lot to do, and it's practically one every day. And Prince Philip, well, he did 250 official engagements in 2015. And he's also the patron or president of some 800 organizations. Now, even if he only gives each of them 1 hour of his time during the year, you do the math. That takes up quite a lot of his time. And this picture that we're seeing here was taken in 2010. So they were aged 84 and 89 respectively. But if you look at them, and if you didn't know who these two people were, you wouldn't think they were that age, would you? You'd think they were, perhaps in their 70s. And I'm sure that it's the fact that they've done this day in, day out for over 60 years. The Queen came to the throne on the death of her father when she was 25 years old, and she's carried on this workload ever since. And I'm sure that is what keeps her quite young looking by comparison to her age. And I have actually personally seen the Queen and Prince Philip, albeit from a distance, and I tell you, they look just like you see them on TV and in photographs. There's no photoshopping gone on here. Now, Pablo Picasso, perhaps one of history's most famous artists, he kept painting up to a few months before his death in 1973 at the age of 91. And indeed, they reckon that the last few years of his life were probably his most productive. And in 1967, when he was 86, he created this 50-foot high sculpture and donated it to the people of Chicago. It's known as the Chicago Picasso. But he did this at the age of 86, which is over 20 years after the usual retirement age for most people. So he was still going even on into his 80s. At the time that I'm making this video, Warren Buffett, known as the Sage of Omaha, is still chairman, president, and CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, one of the world's largest corporations, at the age of 86. And Sir Winston Churchill first became the British Prime Minister at the age of 65, and that was the retirement age in the UK at the time. So at the time when a lot of people were retiring, he was actually coming into his prime and actually occupying the top job for the first time. And he became Prime Minister again in the 1950s at the age of 79. And he only retired as a Member of Parliament in 1964, during the general election of 1964, at the age of 89. And that was only really because his health was declining. He'd had a stroke and was in a wheelchair and was in quite poor health. And his wife persuaded him that perhaps he should stand down as a Member of Parliament. And he did. And of course, he died the following year. Coco Chanel was working on her fashion house's spring catalogue only a few days before she fell ill and died in 1971 at the age of 87, but she was still very much in control of the Chanel brand right up to almost the very end. And of course, the Rolling Stones have a combined age of 289 years. The youngest member, Ronnie Wood, is a sprightly 69 years old, and they're still touring and making music. So the message is very clear: just work on, not fade away.